We're out here in Bears Ears, in Utah, looking for a tiny bit of uranium-rich land. And if we find it, we're gonna stake it as our very own NBC left field claim. President Trump recently reopened the Bears Ears National Monument to new mining claims.
Public lands will once again be for public use.
That means that land that was protected, kind of like a national park, is now open to new claims for valuable minerals.
Outrageous gold rush style grab of public lands to begin on Friday.
And valuable minerals, historically, they lead to land rushes. The U.S. has had a lot of them, especially since all the land was American Indian land in the first place, before the God-given idea of manifest destiny swept American settlers westward. Famously, you have the Oklahoma land rush, where 50,000 people rushed for desirable farmland, and the California gold rush, which, did you know, the claim system that came out of the gold rush is still the basis for our mining claims today. Meaning any company or U.S. individual can literally put stakes in the ground and prospect, all for the low cost of $212 per 20-acre claim, with a little field work and a lot of paperwork. So yeah, we thought there's going to be like a flurry of mining claims, as was heavily reported. We should maybe get a literal stake in this story, because it might just help explain what's going on with mining and America's public lands in 2018. Except there was no land rush. The land rush was supposed to start on February 2nd, and I got to town a few days after. I had to go pick up brochures from the Bureau of Land Management, the BLM, on how to prospect.
Find your discovery site, and that's generally where you put your discovery marker, and then you'll mark your claim corners.
I bought a lot of maps. I had to pick a square on this 1.3 million acre area that I wanted to prospect in. Visit the county recorder's office to see what else had been staked in my area. But since the county doesn't track if claims are still active, I spent a very long night trying to cross-reference it to a BLM database called LR2000. No results. What the fuck do you do? And was just trying to do all of this as fast as possible to get in on the land rush. However, I was the only person in town. And really the first clue that there was no land rush was the local newspaper.
Mineral restrictions continue in Bears Ears country.
It's a headline that's frankly so boring that I didn't even notice it was the same story right away. So I immediately went around the corner to meet Bill.
I'm the publisher, editor, and janitor at the San Juan Record in Monticello, Utah. It's not a bunch of people in Levi Strauss jeans panning for gold. About 95% of the initial land designated by President Obama in 2016 continues to have significant restrictions on the development of minerals.
Okay, have a look. So, Obama created the Bears Ears National Monument as one of his final executive actions, protecting 1.3 million acres of federal land that, actually already had some mining restrictions on it. Only a year later, Trump shrunk it by 85%, creating instead two smaller national monuments. And much of the acreage he took out just returned to being, say, National Forest Service land or wilderness study, which has its own special mining rules. More than that, the Utah Geological Survey says there's very little energy potential inside the original boundaries, meaning there aren't any commercially valuable minerals. The oil and gas wells have all been plugged, and there's just not that much to rush for.
The on-the-ground reality here is that there's very little change. There's very little opportunity for change. Is that all right?
That's perfect. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks for your time. So while Bill's reporting explains why there wasn't a rush of new mining claims, there's something a bit bigger at play here. See, Obama protected more federal land from development than any other president. And he did that through something called the Antiquities Act, which allows presidents or Congress to protect land of cultural or historic importance and turn it into something like a national park. Like, for instance, Bears Ears was protected because 5 tribes have historical claims to the land. The history of land rushes is actually pretty dark, when considered from the perspective of the American Indian. In the 1800s, when American settlers believed that they and their institutions were destined to expand westwards, they steamrolled over the very briefly proposed permanent Indian frontier.
The idea that Native Americans could have all the land west of Arkansas, Missouri, and Iowa in exchange for, white settlers getting the east. And briefly, guard towers were even set up to stop settlers from trading in Indian territory without permits. The frontier never really took effect, as settlers rushed for gold in California or to stake farmland in the Midwest.
Today, there's a couple dozen sites that are integral to Native American history, preserved in national monuments or national parks. But Bears Ears was one of the largest designations of land based on their cultural history. Public land in America, all the federal land, is managed through a multiple use policy, meaning that you have to weigh competing interests. When Obama protected 1.3 million acres for Native American history, ranching families felt like he'd overstepped.
From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. It's going to be only America first. America first.
At the recommendation of his Interior Minister, Ryan Zinke, Trump's shrinking of national monuments is kind of an America first policy through the dual mission of energy security, like producing more of America's energy domestically, and a return to what the Trump administration calls traditional activities on the land.
We're going to get a wonderful announcement coming up on Monday.
We will put our nation's treasures to great and wonderful use. Together, we will usher in a bright new future of wonder and wealth, liberty and law, patriotism and pride.
In addition to shrinking Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante, the Trump administration is reviewing 25 other national monuments for reduction. And because the Antiquities Act doesn't specify if you can shrink national monuments, tribes, environmental advocacy groups, and even Patagonia, an outdoor retailer, are suing the federal government.
That litigation is pending in Washington, but as of February 2nd, the land out in Bears Ears became fair game.
We're just out here in millions and millions of unmarked acres, trying to figure out which 20 of them we should claim.
So the land was only protected for a year, and anyone could have made a claim in the 100 years leading up to Obama's decision.
So hopefully this stays up.
But if you actually want to find the miners, look a little outside the boundaries. So right outside Obama's original designation is the Dineros uranium mine, owned by Energy Fuels International. They haven't mined uranium since 2012 because the market price of uranium is so low.
Yeah, it would take probably $50+ per pound for us to think about reopening the Dineros mine.
Uranium prices surged in 2007, and I saw that actually when I was at the county recorder's office, where there were dozens and dozens of mining claims filed in the years leading up to that.
It's not that hard to file a mining claim.
There's a lot in here.
These claims could lead to future mines, but it will be years and years of paperwork.
Filing a mining claim is step number one out of about a 1,000,000-step process, and probably 10 to 20 years to get actually a mine opened.
There were in fact 2 claims filed the week I was out there. And one of those claims came from a pair of activists and bloggers for REI, another American outdoors company. And they decided to stake land to see if it would actually prevent others from mining it. But that turned out to be optimistic.
There is quite a bit of evidence to say that this is not a useful way of preserving an area.
Because someone can just put a claim on top of your claim. In fact, President Trump's decision to shrink Bears Ears impacts the Dineros mine's plan of operation, which was always outside the boundaries. In late February 2018, the BLM approved the Dineros mine for a 5-fold expansion over the next 20 years. Which means, if and when they get back into uranium production, they could be transporting up to 9 truckloads a day of uranium ore on roads that cut through the national monument. And in the BLM's rationale for this decision, they mention that the smaller monument area means a lesser environmental effect. So even though there was limited potential for our project in pretty much every sense, we wanted to see it through. NBC left field is going to stake some land. What do you make of this plan?
Good luck finding some land that doesn't already have significant mineral restrictions.
I would suspect that most of that area already has claim on it.
Claims.
For you to make a valuable discovery, you're going to have to go get some permits, which is probably at least a 2-year process.
Okay, so you're saying this could be an extended journalistic project?
Yes, it'll be very extended.
So in part 2, I'm going to take you down the rabbit hole. So you go down and down and down. Northeast quarter and the southeast quarter, section 23, township 36S. And show you how you actually file a mining claim and what you can do with that. Although maybe by the end of it, you'll decide it isn't really worth your while. Anyway, you can decide. Click here to watch.